Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. We're going to do some cooking. I know this isn't a cookery channel, but every time I've done one of these, people seem to enjoy it. How do you tie a knot behind you? You don't. Where we've lost weight, we've got enough to come round and tie a knot round the front. We are pleased. I put this on because I tend to splatter. Now I'm going to have to speed some of this up because basically food prep is boring. It's boring. It's not a debate, it's boring. But nonetheless, some people seem to enjoy me messing about cooking. We're getting the big stuff out because we're doing a big cook. Don't need that. Right, I'm doing a curry. Now, the ingredients are all going to be me doing that sort of stuff. The actual sauce, the bulk of the juicy bit sort of thing, comes out of jars. I'm not prepared to mess about with the types of spices and things you need to do a curry from scratch. Because I tried it once and quite honestly it wasn't as good as the stuff that comes out of the jars. So we're not messing about with that. But I've got some chicken breasts. We will be slicing those up. I have some potatoes. I like chopped up potatoes in curry. I'm not supposed to be eating potatoes because they're starchy, but the curry would be a bit bare without them. And then we've got some onions to chop up. Hankies at the ready. Depends how strong they are. Sometimes I can cut up 3 onions and not a light. And other times I get halfway through the first one and whoosh. It just depends, you know, depends what's going on. Let's get my flipping medicine out of the way. This has to stay out because it's a daily use obviously. So we'll get that out of the way. That gets me at my chopping board. Right, so what will be speeded up with a bit of Benny Hill music or whatever I can find. I'm going to chop the onions. They go in here with some oil and they can start cooking while I'm looking at other stuff. But first thing on, because it takes 10 to 15 minutes to cook, is to chop up the potatoes nice and small and get them cooking. While I'm in there, and get one of those out. One of those is to put some things like peas and green beans and sweet corn in to add some veggies into the mix. But the first thing that needs to start cooking is the potatoes. And the fastest and cheapest way of boiling water is not to put it in the saucepan, it's to put it in the kettle. So we'll get some water going while we chop the potatoes. Refill my jug. Now I'm probably going to get a minimum of 6, possibly more portions. So I've got these containers that I use, which I will get out ready, and I will be portioning up one for me on a plate and the rest to go in the freezer to dip into as and when. Now I'm not supposed to be having any added salt, so the potatoes will just get chopped up and put in boiling water and cooked for about, because they're going to be cut up small, potatoes normally take around 15 to 20 minutes, but it depends on the size of the pieces. Because I'm going to chop them up really small, 10 minutes will do. They're also going to cook for a while in the sauce, so they will get some additional cooking. So that's what's going on. The sauces are up here. They came with my shopping some time ago. They've been sat there waiting to be used, along with some chili sauces. We've got a madras, a good heat. You've got a tikka masala, which doesn't exist. That is not an Indian curry, that is just a made up curry that was done in England for all the people that had come from curry world into our country. And it's made up. It was mainly for the English taste really, but it doesn't really exist. And then the other one is a korma, because although I like some heat, I also like some creaminess. And I used to like really hot curries, you know, the sort where you put the toilet roll in the fridge ready for the morning. Bit rude, but so be it. But adding a korma in takes the edge off the heat and gives it a creamy sort of flavour, which works well with a chicken curry. And chicken obviously is a whitish meat, so for the diet thing, we've got chicken, potatoes, a little bit iffy, but as a one-off meal now and again, that's not a problem. I'm happy with that. And then chopped up onions, no problem with that. But our wok, that will be to cook the onions in, put the potatoes in when they've cooked, put the sauces in, put the frozen veggies in, the peas, sweet corn, beans and stuff like that. They will get put in boiling water, put in the microwave and brought to the boil before they go in there, because it takes the heat straight out of the sauce if you put frozen veg in. So that's that. Kettle's boiled, and then the other large pan is to cook the chicken in, because I like to brown the chicken. To do that, it goes in bare, no oil, nothing like that. So my kettle's boiled. Get that in there, and then we will start slicing our veggies and do the prep. This is the point where I leave you and the speeded up section occurs. I'll have to move the tripod several times, sort of thing. If I'm working here with the tripod there, you're going to be looking at the back of me, aren't you? So we'll bring it over here a bit so you can see what's going on. I'm not quite sure why anybody would want to see this, because most people have done this enough times themselves. Why would you want to watch somebody else doing it? But this is where it's all going to be going on. And yeah, this section will now fade out and it will come back in at a much speeded up version while we get this meal going. that's all the chopping up done. Onions, potatoes are boiling away there, they're nearly done. Chicken's all chopped up ready, onions in there with some oil. We're sort of ready to cook now. We did have the streaming eyes, they were quite strong onions, so be it. We need to see what we're doing, and we need to get the fan on. We need to get some flame under the onions now, they're the next things to cook. They can go on full blast until they start to sizzle. So we're now on to the actual cooking bit. I'll wait till the onions start to sizzle. When they're cooked, when I'm happy that they're cooked, then I add the sauce. I don't start cooking the chicken until virtually everything else is in the curry itself is going to go in the wok where the onions are. The other pan is just to cook the chicken in, and I keep it separate so that it browns. Otherwise you're boiling it. You know, if you put it in with the sauce, it's boiled chicken, not fried chicken, and fried chicken has a nicer taste, especially if you brown it nicely. Unfortunately, unless you buy a fresh chicken straight from the farmer nowadays, the chances are your chicken that you buy might have a bit of water added, and that water comes out as you try and cook it. When you're trying to fry it, you don't want water in the pan, so I have it on my big ring, highest heat I can possibly get, throw it in and it goes whoosh. And most of that water evaporates prior to starting to boil the chicken, so it does actually fry, and it browns nicely. This is what normally happens. Because I'm videoing, I suspect some it will go completely wrong. But anyway, we're down to the cooking bit now. And obviously, while this sort of section is going on, there are pauses. What are pauses for? Sip of wine for the chef. Right, I'll come back when there's something else to do, but at the moment we're just cooking onions. Boring. I'll be back. Right, onions are cooked. Slight catch. Slight bit of browning. As Jamie Oliver says, it's not burnt, it's flavour. That's exactly where I want them to be. Potatoes are cooked, they've been drained and steam has come off of them, which means they're relatively dry now. Good. You went in the sink. So this now can be turned right down, and we can add our sauces. Kettle's boiling, ready to do the frozen veg. Come on. Sometimes they just won't let go. Airtight. Well, if you want shelf life, you've got to keep the air out. Oh well, 2 out of 3. Not bad. And then we stir that in. Obviously the pan's hot and the onions and the potatoes are hot, and this speeds up the heating process for the sauces. Give them a good stir. So they're now lukewarm. They're not hot, they're lukewarm. So we've got to bring them up to temperature. We'll do that on very low heat so that we don't catch on the bottom. As low as it will go, just to warm them up. Now in these jars is sauce that hasn't come out yet. So what we do with that, we put a drop of water in. Give it a good shake. And we'll add that. That's good stuff. And then we rinse these jars out ready to go to recycling. Quite honestly, most people don't bother washing anything, but I usually rinse them out. And when you put a hole in it to get the lid off, when you shake it with the water, you make sure you put your finger over the hole. Otherwise it goes all over the place. How do I know this, I hear you ask? The answer's obvious. We've done that before. Now the amount of water that's gone in to remove the rest of this sauce out of these jars will thin the curry down a bit, but not enough for me to worry about. It's not enough to sort of take the edge off of the taste or anything. It'll be fine. I mean, I used to cook curries quite thin, simply because I always had rice, and if you've got a nice lot of sauce, the rice absorbs it and it all works out nicely. But now I don't tend to have rice with curries. I'd like the sauce to be a bit thicker. So I just swing the camera around here. We've got some more ingredients to go on. Remember, I got this out earlier. That's a microwave-proof dish. So we'll have some peas. We'll have some sweet corn. I'm not going to bother putting beans in because they need to be chopped up quite small. I can't be bothered. These veggies all taste like curry at the end of the day. This is nothing more than bulking it up, really. It's just adding some more bulk. Now we've had the kettle on again, because again the cheapest way to boil water is in the kettle. And then we chuck that in the microwave and bring it back up to the boil, and then that's ready to go. Don't need any more water, so we don't need to top that up. Our sauces are probably coming up to temperature now, slowly but surely. There's no rush. Now, because I don't like doing too many things at once, it can get complicated. It can get such that something's not getting the full attention it needs. Let's put it that way. That's the polite version. So the potatoes and the onions and the sauces are coming up to temperature. I like to get everything up to temperature to a very, very gentle bloop, and then I leave it like that for anything, 15 minutes to an hour, just to bloop away. The longer you leave it, the more little bits of steam bloom off and the thicker it gets. So if I wanted a much thicker curry, I'd probably bloop it away for about an hour. But as I said, I don't like it too thick. My other pan now is sitting there waiting to go for the chicken. I don't start on the chicken until everything else is done and I can forget it, because I need to concentrate on the chicken. These lumps have all been cut up to roughly the same size. The theory is they will all cook at the same rate. You have big bits and small bits of chicken, you will end up with big bits with not cooked bits in the middle. Because as your smaller bits start to brown, you think, oh, that's done, and it's not. So try and cut your chicken up if you're going to cook it this way, pan fried, to as even sized chunks as you can possibly do it. That way they should cook evenly. But it is a bit fiddly doing chicken, because I chuck it, it has to go in two lots. This pan's not big enough to take that lot all in one go. It's a lot of chicken. So basically I put half of it in and spread it out around the pan. The pan will be hot, and then it has to be turned over. And that's quite difficult and fiddly to do. You know, it involves a fork and each piece getting turned, and it's a bit fiddly. So that's why I want everything else done and out of the way. That's not coming up to the boil yet. So that'll be the next thing we look at, and basically I'll shut down till then, because there's nothing much going on. Well, there is, but you don't need to see it, do you? Right, the peas and the sweet corn have been brought back up to boil in the microwave. They're steaming away just to dry off a bit. If you let them dry off a bit via the steam, they don't add water into the curry, which waters it down. So those just go in. And the curry itself at the moment has just come up to the blooping stage. So we are up to temperature. We'll stir that in. It's starting to fill up, isn't it? There's not much room left now. We'll be up to the rim in a minute when we get the chicken in. And that's how I cook. I do things like this, the chili. I used to do spaghetti, but because I'm not supposed to be eating pasta to any extent, we don't have the spaghetti bolognese very often now. I do it occasionally. And it's the same, I like my the cottage pie that I cook. That works really nicely, but I'm not supposed to be having the potatoes because of the starchiness. And so some of the things I used to have quite regular, I don't have so often. I don't not have them, I just don't have them so often. So that is now ready for the chicken. So what we do now is we set off a lot of smoke and set off the fire alarms. I've put a tiny bit of oil in this pan. I don't use this ring very often. In fact, rarely do I use this ring. I'm just trying to work out which one it is to actually turn the flipping thing on. Now this is a powerful ring, this one. It's a double ring. You can see that that's a lot of flame. Yeah? So we put the pan on, and the tiny bit of oil that's in there serves a purpose. What purpose does it serve? There's no point in putting the chicken in a cold pan if you want to brown it. So that tiny little bit of oil, give it a couple of minutes for the pan to get hot. It's a good pan, it evenly heats, so you don't get like hot points and cold points. It heats up evenly, and with a flame like that underneath it, it should get hot quite quickly. And then what we do is we find a piece of chicken. First of all, we wait for the oil to move fluently. As soon as the oil starts flowing like water, the pan's hot. Yeah? If you wait for it to smoke, it's too hot. And also sets a fire alarm. Well, with this on, with the extractor on, it shouldn't set the fire alarm off. First time that fire alarm went off, it frightened the life out of me. Mojo actually messed himself. It frightened him so much, but he wasn't deaf then. He's deaf now, he'd probably take no notice of it. But what made me laugh is I asked next door if the fire alarm disturbed them. They didn't hear it. Well, if they didn't hear it, who the hell else would? So I could burn down to the ground and nobody would take any notice. So what's the point in having one? Apart from letting me know there's a fire. I'd probably know anyway. Now what we do is we pick a relatively small bit of chicken and we chuck it in and see what happens to it. It hasn't gone whoosh, so the pan's not hot enough. But we leave it there and watch it and wait for it to get to that point, then we can add some more. Obviously, as you add the chicken in, it cools the pan. Yeah? So you take some of the heat away from the pan. Why I do it in two sections. What are you doing here? Just starting. Just getting there. Starting to spit. Jolly good. That's blooping. That's nice. Very slow bloop. That's fine. So what we do now is we get about half this chicken and we chuck it in. That's the noise we want. That means the pan's hot enough. Now I just need to rinse my hands because I can't stand the juice off of fresh meat on my hands when I'm working. And then what we do now is we quickly spread these pieces out so that they've got their own space. Every piece has its own space. That way it will cook on one side very fast. But it won't if it's all piled on top of each other and touching. So we try and find a space for each piece. Sort of like that. What do we do now? We leave it alone. I'm only using my lighter to actually poke this around when I'm meant to use obviously something else. Something like this would be good. But we leave it alone now and we watch the colour change. As the chicken's cooking through, it changes from pink to white. And as the white moves up the sides of the lumps of chicken, it's cooking through. So when that gets to about halfway, the chicken's half cooked. The top's still pink. That's not cooked at all. That's why we have to turn it over. And this is the bit that is uncomfortable because I'm right above the flame. I end up getting very, very hot. But it has to be done. This is the way it cooks properly. So we've got to go to each individual piece now and turn it over. And it takes a while, obviously. And my hands are getting very hot already and I'm not hardly started. But this is just how it has to be done. Turn them all over. You can see some of them are browning now. Some of them aren't. But they will brown on the side I'm turning over now. If they're not brown on the side that's currently against the pan, they soon will be on the other side. So as long as they're brown on at least one side, that'll do. Ow! It's getting hot. I don't see a better way of doing this, quite honestly. They have to be turned. I know some people just shake the pan. But you end up some pieces turn over and then turn back again. By doing this manually by hand, I guarantee every piece will be turned. Therefore, it will be cooked on both sides, and as it cooks on both sides, it cooks through. So I know the middle is done. Plus, it will get some time in the hot fluid over here, the curry sauces, to help cook it through if it's not already done so. So there we go. You can see some of the pieces are nice and brown. Can you see that? Yes, you can. And we'll now let it go. We'll let it sizzle for a bit. What do we do while we're waiting? Well, obviously. I haven't topped that up yet. I know you lot think I'm an artist. We haven't even got down one glass yet. But we're letting that go. Give this a stir while we're waiting. This is gradually getting thicker as time goes on, because as it flutes, little flutes of steam pop out of the sauce, which is basically water evaporating, leaving the sauce and the flavours behind. So I'm quite happy for that to carry on fluting. It's also softening the potatoes a bit more, because they weren't cooked right through. They were left to allow a little bit more. Right, our chicken is now at the stage where I'm happy. Yep. I'm stirring that round so that it's all that caramelised flavour in the bottom of the pan is now getting spread around the chicken pieces. Now those will go straight in there. Put that back on there. Give it a minute. We will add a tiny bit of oil again just to give it a bit of lubrication. You don't need to worry about the pan coming up to temperature this time. This is just olive oil, not extra virgin olive oil. You don't cook with that. put that on your salad. Just olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil degenerates at the temperature required to cook. So you've ruined it, basically, by cooking with it. And as it's so expensive nowadays, that's a very daft thing to do. Right, so we'll spread these out again. They've started to sizzle nicely, which is jolly good. Again, trying to find their own space. And then watch the colour change as the white comes up the sides. We know it's cooking through. And when the white's halfway up, it's halfway cooked. Time to turn it over. And start cooking our hands like we did last time. It is a pain, but I've found no other way to do it. Stir that chicken in while we're waiting. You can see now the volume in this pan is getting there. When the next lot of chicken goes in, we'll be nearly up to the rim. And I know when that level is reached, I should get 7 or 8 portions. One for me, and 6 or 7 for the freezer for future meals, basically. Yeah, it's all going quite well actually. Nothing's failed yet. It's probably because I'm concentrating extra hard because of this going on. It's like there's 1,000 people watching me, which is not a good idea really. It's the sort of thing that's going to make you go. Anyway, that's up to the halfway point, if not more. Which probably means these pieces will be a bit browner. Good stuff, like I say. Jamie Oliver, at his level, can say it's not burnt its flavour, then I'm all with that. It's like when you listen to somebody with your orchids, as this is an orchid channel primarily. You get somebody who's been doing it donkey's years and they're obviously very good at it, and they offer some advice. It pays to listen to it. And I'm not beyond that point. I still listen to advice. Not as much as I used to, but I still listen to advice. And remember that some advice is ill-advised because it's based on hearsay rather than practical experience. You're much better off listening to a current grower. Somebody who's growing today in this world with the media and the facilities that are available today, rather than reading a 50-year-old book, some of which has been copied from the previous 50-year-old book. So it can be donkey's years out of date, and start giving advice that has long since been superseded. So go with advice from today people. People that are doing it now, not people that did it a long time ago, because they didn't have all the knowledge we've got. If you go back 50 years, where did people get their knowledge from? Books. You didn't have an internet, did you? You didn't have YouTube, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have all that. You had books. And the people you knew that did the same sort of thing. And there weren't many of them. If you go back 50 years, a lot of the orchid societies didn't exist, because they're more recent than that. And a lot of the people that joined those orchid societies 50 years ago, all of their knowledge came out of a book. So it's today people that give you the good stuff, not dusty old books in a library. I've got nothing against historical books saying how things were and how things used to be done in those days. I've got no problem with that. It's good to know how those things were done. But that's not good advice necessarily for today's world. Right, how are we doing? We're blooping away nicely over here. We're blooping a little bit too much. But we'll slow that down again in a minute. So we're nearly done. The fact that I'm not having rice tonight, all I've got to do is let this sit and soak, and every time it bloops a little bit more moisture is lost, and that thickens up the sauce and enhances the flavour. So let's get the last bit of chicken in. Again, I'm going to wipe the chicken around the pan to absorb as much of those caramelised type flavours as possible onto the pieces of chicken. They're not going to do any good in the pan, are they? That's going in the washing up. So if they're on the pieces of chicken, they're flavour and they go into our curry. And that's it. That's all that's going in there. We are done. Now all we've got to do, and as you can see, we are nearly up to the rim, we are nearly coming up over the sides. I've done this before. I know the sort of quantities that allow me to get the number of portions I want for the freezer. Now, part and parcel of my diet is geared up to smaller portions. The smaller portions with things like this that will portion up and go in the freezer, the smaller portions are achieved by not having the rice. But it does allow me to have a little bit more curry in the size of the portions, so that I get a nice plate full of stuff. And that's it. Here endeth, I'm not going to call this a lesson, that would be naughty, it's not a lesson. Here endeth the demonstration, yeah, let's call it a demonstration. It works like that. So all I've got to do now is look at the clock and think, it's 15 minutes past the normal time I eat, and that's because I've been faffing about trying to make a video instead of just getting on and cooking. But nonetheless, it's still not late. I like to have my evening meal around 4:45, 5 o'clock, or it's now 5:15. This needs to have at least 10 minutes to bloop, thicken up a bit, and allow the sauces to penetrate into that chicken. Not all the way through. Same with the potato pieces. They're small enough to absorb some of that sauce, but not so small as they only taste of sauce. So the individual flavours of the elements in there will just about come through, especially the chicken. Still be able to taste the chicken, it'll work well. So that's it, that's a bulk cook. That's the cook that I do for the freezer that involves the most amount of preparation. The other one that I do most frequently is the chili. Tins of beans, slop. Sauces, slop. Mincemeat, stir in the pan and cook and brown. Onions, brown before the mincemeat goes in. There's no preparation with the mincemeat, all you got to do is chop the onions. Everything else either comes out of a tin or a packet and goes slop in there, or a jar. So this is the one that needs a bit more prep, but it's still not a lot, not for the amount of meals I'm going to get out of that. And I like my curry, it's something I've always enjoyed.